Sagt the Heilige Gemara. Tana Rab Chiya. Rab Chiya taught us. The Mishnah listed off four obvious Nezikin. Rab Oishia further split that into 13 categories of Nezikin. Rab Chiya is saying Esrim Va'arba obvious Nezikin. There's 24. Now we already have the 13 of Rab Oishia, so all we're going to do now is add 11 more, and 13 plus 11 will be 24. So let's go through them, the additional 11. Tashlume Kefil, 1. Tashlume Bava Chamisha, that's 2. And these are both Knossos. The Ganev, that's the Ganev paying back what he stole, 3. The Gazlan, that's a Gazlan paying back what he stole, that's 4. Edim Zoimimin, who have to pay for damages that they try to inflict upon another. Via Einis, a man who is ma'anis, another woman has to pay 50 shekel. V'amafate, a man who seduces another woman, he has to pay 50 shekel. That's 7. Moichi Shamra is a man who falsely accuses his wife of being unfaithful. That's 8. V'ametama, somebody who makes his friend's truma tame, which makes it virtually useless. All they can use it now is for firewood, which is 9. V'amedama, and somebody who mixes truma into somebody else's chulin, which now reduces the value of the chulin because it has to be eaten with the same restrictions as the truma that got mixed into it. And number 11 is v'amenasech, which Rashi learns, someone who takes somebody else's wine and pours it la'avodah zarah and makes it asur. Frag to Gemara, v'hani tleisar. Plus we have the 13 that Rab Oishia already listed. So 13 plus 11, ha'esr and varba. The sum total of 20. Frag to Gemara, Rab Oishia, my timer loy tani hani. Why didn't Rab Oishia also include in his list of Nezikin? Why didn't he include the 11 that Rab Chiya adds? Gemara b'mamana kamairi b'knasa loy kamairi. Rab Chiya holds that even things that are knas, he wanted to include in his list. Rav Oishia did not want to include payments of knas in his list. So kefil, arba b'chamisha, these are all knas. Oynis, mefatim, shemra, those are knas, and that's why Rav Oishia did not want to include those on this list. Frekti Gemara, but there are things in Rav Chiya's list that are not knas, that are moment, such as Ganev, the Gazlan, the Mamanahu. Listening, why didn't Rav Oishia list those as well? Zok Gemara, in fact, he did list those, but in another context. Hakatani le shomer chinam v'ashoyel. And Rashi tells us a shomer chinam who then denies that he has it. He says someone stole it from me, which is referred to as toy and tainis ganav. A shomer chinam is also considered a ganav, and therefore, he had no reason to list it again, ganav, because that's what a shomer chinam is. Rab Chiya nami hatani le shomer chinam v'ashoyel. Rab Chiya also uses the list of Rab Oishia, which includes shomer chinam, and yet Rab Chiya still added to the list ganav v'gazlan. Zok Gemara, tani mamane de asali adei b'hitera. Yes, he's a ganav if he's tying tiniest ganav on the mitzvah. But he originally received that money, he originally received that item legally. It was given to him as a shomer. Then, by being tiny ganav, it got transferred into a gnev. Masha Enkein, the case of ganav that we talk about here, that Reb Chiya added to the list, this is money. If you go steal something, when the money originally comes to you, it's coming to you be'isr. It's that distinction that Reb Chiya thought noteworthy, and that's why he mentioned separately Ganev and Gazlan, and separately Shomer Chinam. Frek to Gemara, what about Edim Zoimimin? Edim Zoimimin is also Mamanahu. Why do you say Edim Zoimimin is Mamana? So Rashi tells us, because you only pay what you wanted to damage. Tosfos asks us even more. Isn't there a rule of kasher zomam v'loy kasher also? which would indicate that it's a knas, because I only pay the damages that I caused if I was an Eid Zoymim, if the psak had not yet been carried out. But if the psak was already carried out, then I'm not punished. That has every symptom of knas, because actually after the damage is inflicted, I'm no longer mechuyev to pay back. And for Tosfos, that might be the case by Misa. If Eidim Zoymim end up saying false Eidus and they convict somebody of Misa, if the person that they convicted of Misa was not killed yet, only then does the halacha Beit Zoymim sentence them to death. But if the victim had already been killed, even if they're proven wrong and they're Eid Zoymim, they don't get killed. Zok Tosfos, that rule of kasher zaman v'loy kasher asa does not apply to mominus, and therefore by mominus it's even kasher asa, and that's why you could call it momina. The question is, why is there no kasher asa by mominus? Simple, because you can always pay back. It's never irrevocable. It's never complete. Money can always be fixed, and therefore there's no such thing as kasher asa. Tosfos is another very interesting svara. Tosfos says that if you think about it, if kasher zomam is mechayev you, surely kasher also should. So madich, if the victim didn't get killed, we killed Eidim Zoymim. Surely if the victim was killed already, we should kill Eidim Zoymim. So why don't we? The Teretz is because there's a rule in the Torah, ein oinshin min adin. You'll never give someone a punishment like Misa based on the Kal V'chayim. But that rule only applies to oinshim. It does not apply to mominus. So therefore I have a Kal V'chayim. Madich, if I did not yet make someone pay unlawfully, and I'm found to be an Eid Zoymim, I have to pay him back in full. Kol shekain, if I already made him pay unlawfully, kol shekain there, I have to pay back in full. So, fact the more Edim Zoymim, the moment who listening, why didn't Reb Oishia list it, and instead of having 13, he should have had 14? So, Gemara maybe Sover Lo Reb Akiva. Reb Oishia holds like Reb Akiva, and Reb Akiva is a shita that clearly determines that Eid Zoymim is only midrabanan. It's only a knas. I'm sorry, not midrabanan. It's only a knas. The Amar ein mishalmin al piat. Rabbi Kiva holds that if an Eid Zoymim is moida, he becomes potter. There's a rule moida beknas potter. So Rabbi Kiva holds that an Eid Zoymim that was moida beknas, he will be potter, and therefore it's considered knas, and that is why Rabbi Oishia didn't include Eid Zoymim in his list, and that's why he has 13 and not 14. Frank the Gemara, if you're going to say that Rabbi Oishia agrees with Rabbi Kiva, well, then there's another issue, because yesterday we asked a question on Rabbi Oishia. And the question that we asked is, why does he list Adam Hamazik again if Mava is already Adam, and that's already in the Mishnah? So the Gemara answered, because there's a distinction between Adam, who is Mazik property, that only pays nezek, and that is what Mava in the Mishnah refers to. And there's a distinction between Adam, as mentioned in Rabbi Oishia's Brisa, that damages another person. And Adam that damages another person doesn't merely pay nezek, he also pays tsar, ripoy, sheves, and boishes. So the Gemara asked, okay, so why doesn't Rabbi Oishia mention again the nizakin of shor? Just because it was mentioned in the Mishnah, why don't we say that there's shor, the azik shor? The Mishnah could be referring to shor that damages assets, and he could have mentioned shor again in his brisa, referring to a shor who damages a person. That was the kasha that the Gemara asked yesterday. And the Gemara answered, Bishlama, making a distinction between man who damages assets versus man who damages a man. There's a difference in halacha. Instead of paying only nezek, like when you damage assets, you pay nezek tzari, poi, sheves, and boishes. But an animal doesn't make a difference if the animal damages an asset, nor if an animal damages a person. Either way, the animal only pays nezek. So why would we create another category of niskei shor if it's exactly the same as niskei adam? But frag the Gemara, if you hold like Rabbi Kiva, then there is a important distinction between a shor, the azik shor, and a shor, the azik adam. And if there is an important distinction, then why didn't Rabbi Oishia mention another category of shor in his brisa? And he could have said the shor in the Mishnah is shor, the azik shor, and the shor in the brisa would be shor, the azik adam. What is the difference according to Rabbi Kiva? What is the difference between shor dazik shor and shor dazik adam? Zok the Gemara. Isavalak Rabbi Kiva listening trey gavni shor. Listening shor dazik shor. Listening shor dazik adam. What is the distinction? The non Rabbi Kiva Aimer. Av tam shechava ba'adam mishalem b'moiser nezek sholi. The halacha is, we know if a shor tam damages, the shor tam pays chatzi nezek. That's if it damages an asset. Rabbi Kiva holds if a shor tam damages a person, it pays nezek shalim. So that's what Rabbi Kiva means. Av tam shechava ba'adam mishalem b'moiser nezek shalim. What does this word b'moiser mean? It should just say mishalem nezek shalim, because Rabbi Kiva is talking about a case where not only did the shor cause damage to the person caused damage to the shor. So what you do is you figure out the balance. So let's say the person did $500 damage to the shor, and the shor did $1,500 damage to the adam. The difference, the moiser, is 1,000. And according to Rabbi Kiva, the shor that damaged the person, like this case that we're discussing, pays the full 1,000. Nezek shalim. That's a very important halachic distinction. So then we could argue, Rabbi Yosy, even though it's a shor in the Mishnah, that's referring to shor dazik shor that only pays chatzi nezek the first 2 times. But he should have listed shor again in the brisa, referring to shor dazik adam, which pays nezek shalom right away, which would indicate that it's very, very different than shor dazik shor. Zok to Gemara, hatavi Rabbi Kiva l'gezize. If you really want to follow up on what Rabbi Kiva holds about a shor dazik adam, he broke his fist, his whole koyach of claiming that this is a new category of shor dazik adam. That theory is blown out of the water, because Rabbi Kiva said, yes, you do pay the full damages, but with a big caveat. The Tanya Rabbi Kiva Omer, Yochel Aftam Shechavu Ba'adam Yishalem in the Haliyah. I would think Tam Shechavu Ba'adam has to pay in the Haliyah, meaning even if the damage owed is worth way more than the value of the actual ox, you still have to pay the damage in full, which is really what regular nezek is. It doesn't make a difference what my animal's worth. I have to pay what I damaged you. Talmud Leimer, Yatzaloi, Migufay Mishalem, Vein Mishalem Aliyah. If the moiser, if what the owner of the animal owes the person is $1,000, but his ox is only worth $500, even though he has to pay the full amount, but only up to the value of his ox. So that sort of knocks down this whole distinction that shor dazik adam should have its own category. So yes, it's still true that you have to pay nezek shalim, but that, the Gemara argues, is not a reason why we would make shor dazik adam into a whole new category worthy of its own mention in the price, because it's not really like a regular nezek. It's still subject to the rules of Karen of a shor dazik shor, because it's still, the liability of the owner of the shor is still limited to the value of the shor. Okay, so let's go down the list. Yes, the 50 shkolim that's prescriptive in the Torah is knas, but the ma'anis, the mafata, and the mochi shemra doesn't just pay the 50 shkolim or the 100 shkolim. There's an additional payment there. He has to pay nezek, tsar, ritwe, shevis, and boishes in all these cases, and that's the mamana. Those payments are mamana. So according to Rabbi Yosy, why didn't he list those? And then there would have been another 3 examples of an oinis mafatim shemra. So instead of 13, he should have had 16. The mamanu listening, zok gemara, no manavsh. In nezek, if you're talking about the nezek damage, the amount that she's worth less because of the fact that she was violated, tonale, it already says nezek. That's one of the items that Rabbi Yosy already listed. Itzar tonale. So at the end of the day, all of the different payments related to Onis Mafata and Mochi Shemra that would qualify as Mamana, those are damages that Rabbi Yosy already mentioned explicitly in his brisa. The only payment that is not included in Rabbi Yossy's list is the knas of the 50 shkolim. Knasa. The knasa like Kamari. Like we said earlier, Rabbi Yosy was not included in his list payments of knas. So now let's go to the next items on the list that Rabbi Chiya added and discuss why Rabbi Yosy rejected it. Hamatama, Bamadama, Bamanasa. That's a mamanahu. you've damaged the person. Listening, let it list it. Let Rab Oishia list it as well. Zok Gemara Manavshik. The damage done in Midama, Metama, Menasech is not a physical damage. It's not able to be seen by the eye. Rather, it's a virtual damage. It's a Yerideidik is. That's called a Hezek Sheni Nicker. There's a Machloikis if that's considered damage. So Hezek Sheni Nicker Shmei Hezek, if that's considered real damage, well, then you can't ask me why Reb Oishi didn't include it. Hatanalei Nezek. He actually did list Nezek. If it's a Hezek Sheni Nicker Shmei Hezek, then that's Nezek. And he Hezek Sheni Nicker Loi Shmei Hezek, well, then if it's not really considered a damage, so then why do I have to pay? I would only have to pay because it's a knas shekansu rabbanon. So then have a leknasa. And once again, it would be knasa like a marry. We already said that Reb Oishia was not including damages of knas in his list. Zok to Gemara, but Reb Chiya did include it in his list. Lema kasav Reb Chiya hezek sheni nicker loishma hezek. It must be that Reb Chiya does not consider a hezek sheni nicker a proper hezek. The shmei hezek, if it is considered a hezek, hatana le nezek. Reb Chiya includes in this list the nezek of Reb Oishia. So why would he mention it again in the form of metama, medama, menasech? If you all nezek sheni nicker shmei hezek, that's just another nezek. So why in the world did he mention those as independent categories? It must be that he holds hezek sheni nicker lav shmei hezek. Zakamar, no, maybe he holds shmei hezek. So why did Reb Chiya see the need to itemize metama, medama, and menasech? Maybe for a different reason. Because Tana Hazeket the Minkara, but Tana Hazeket le Minkara. He wanted to highlight that subtle category as well. There's damages that are noticeable. That's what he includes in the nezek of the list of Rabbi Chiya. And he added to it additional damages that are regular damages, but they're damages that aren't visible. They're hezek sheni nicker. He wanted those to have their own category and their own listing. Okay, so now we've explained why the Mishnah included its 4, why Rav Oishia included its 13, and why Rav Chiya included 20. Zok Gemara, Bishlam al done. The Mishnah, our Mishnahs are Bava Nazikim. Why is the Mishnah starting off with a number? It would be very easy for any person to count it. Sure, Bar Mavahever, 4. What do I need the Mishnah to give me the count? Tanam and Yana Lamuted Rav Oishia. The Tanis counted a number Arba to tell us, I hold that we only need to list 4 and not many more, like Rabbi Oishia Rav Chiya did. So Tanis spoke out 4 to say, I believe that these should be the 4 categories and none other. Rabbi Oishia, Tana Minyana, Lamutid Rav Chiya. Rabbi Oishia might have said 13 because he wants to show that he disagrees with Rav Chiya who holds 24. Elaminyani Rav Chiya Lamutid Mai. Rav Chiya said there's only 24. What others might I have included in the list that Rav Chiya is trying to hint to me with his number that I shouldn't include in the list? So Dr. Kamar, we have 2 other items that could have made the list that Rav Chiya wants to make sure we don't. Lamute Moiser, which Rashi's Moiser is what we are over every day. When the Meshulach comes into Shul and he says, Eifai Mandelbaum, and then we point to Mandelbaum. That is Moiser. In other words, you're telling somebody how we can get money out of somebody. So that's really a joke. What I really mean is when a government thug comes to steal, extort money from somebody, and he's looking for somebody who has money to be extorted, you're not allowed to show him who has that money because that's damaging your friend, Rama. And we also have Mefagel. Now Rashi is Mefarish Mefagel, not Pigel. Rashi is Mefarish that you, as a kohen, were makrib a carbon, shalolich and carbon. And there's a lot of discussion in the Achronim why Rashi didn't just talk about regular Pigel. And there are those who argue, who try to explain, there's a lot of Torah about it, there are those who explain that Pigel is not me damaging the carbon. I actually did something that caused a psul, but I'm not directly attacking the carbon. I did everything in the carbon perfectly. I just was trying to eat it in the wrong place or wrong time. Mashenkin, if you have kavanah on this carbon that's supposed to be a chatas, you have in mind that it should be a shlomim, or vice versa, so then you yourself are destroying the carbon itself. That's what some people explain why Rashi was not mefarish mefagel in the most simplest sense. Frank the Gemara, Velisni, why Taka didn't Reb Chiya include Moshe mefagel? And then it could have been 26, Shem Abaya, Shemus Nezikin. Zok Reb Bishlam mefagel, I understand why Reb Chiya did not want to include in his list mafag. Because the kachim like Kamari. We weren't discussing kachim, so we weren't discussing any damages related to karbonos. Elamaiser, my time aloitani. Why Taka didn't Reb Chiya include Moiser in the list? Dr. Gemara, shiny Moiser the dibura. It's only words. Uva dibura loy Kamari. The Tana didn't want a list of damages that are just caused by someone saying something. The Tana wants to refer to things that damages that had a mice involved. Freit Gemara, Moichi Shemra the diburahu vikatani. Moichi Shemra, all it is he made an accusation against his wife. That's also a dibur. Yet it was listed. So Gemara dibur dis b'maisav. The husband didn't just make an accusation. First they had a ma'isa bia, then he made the accusation. That's a lot more than just a dibur. Freit Gemara, but what about Eidim Zoymimin? Eidim Zoymimin dibura, the less b'maisav. All he did was say testimony. There was no mice involved. The katani awesome. Yet the Brisa says, Aval Gav, the less be Maisa. The Brisa lists it, even though there's no mice involved. Vikatani, period. And for the Gemara, Hosam, Aval Gav, the less be Maisa, Edim Zomimin, even though it's not associated with a Maisa, Rachmana Korya Maisa. The Torah calls it a Maisa. It's not a Maisa, but the Torah calls it a Maisa. That's enough for the Tana, for Reb Oishia, to include it on his list. The Torah calls it a nasiya again and again.
Yosy, usually when somebody has dibur and lets off a rant about lashon hara about somebody else, it was preceded by a ma'aseh.
But not his ma'aseh. It was the
no. He was either he did it to somebody or somebody did it to him.
Right, but the person saying the story over did not do a ma'aseh. He did the dibur.
Unless he's proud that he
talking about it. So the isser of the dibur is something that's only dibur. So according to our Tana and our Mishnah, it says the headings, the four categories, and the Gemara right away said Avos Dika Toldos, and the Gemara went through all the four Nezikin and itemized what the Toldos are. Like for Karen, it was Negifa, Neshicha, Beita, Revitza. Right, the Gemara went through the totals of each one of the ovis as listed and discussed if it told us. I love Kiyaitzeben. So Bishop Latadidon, Tana Ovis, Michal Dika Toldos. Elder Reb Chiya Reb Oishia, who they threw in everything included in the kitchen sink, there's no toldos. Everything is enough. You wrote everything down. Ovois, Michal Dika Toldos, Toldos ain't my new. Where are their toldos? I mean, some of them we can identify toldos to, but the entire list, there's no way you'll be able to find toldos to all of these items in the list, like Mochi Shemra, like Edim Zoymimin. Where are you going to find a tolda for them? Zokti Gemara, Amar Ravo, all they meant to say is not that there's toldos. He was trying to say they're all like avos. Kulon ka avos, we're all identifying them as avos. What's the relevance of avos? L'shalem mi meitav. That they all have to pay for meitav, meaning in all of these damages, if the perpetrator did not have the cash to pay, and he wanted to pay off his victim with land, it has to be meitav, it has to be the best land. My timer, we have 24 avos nezikin that all have to pay me meitav. It only says once in the pasuk regarding shein and regal, you pay me meitav. It says ubir b'steyacher v'shilach es beiroi ubir b'steyacher meitav sadayu meitav karma yishalit. So how do you know by all these 24 avos nezikin that there's a chiyuv to pay for meitav? Asya tachas nesina yishalim kes. There are 4 words that we use in Exeris Shava to spread the word to all of these nezikin, and they're tachas, nesina, yishalim, and kesed. In all of these 24, there is one of these 4 words, which then links it back to the source of shein v'regel that you pay for meitav. And Rashi goes through it briefly, and I'm going to just run through some of the highlights of Rashi. Tachas nesina. The Bekulu Ksiv, in every one of these 24 nezikin, you're going to find a word that either says tachas, or nesina, or shalom or kesef. So first Rashi talks about the word tachas. The Gamrinon tachas mishor muad dechsev beishor tachas ashor. Shor learns from shein v'regel that you pay me meitav haaretz, and uses the word tachas by shor. Therefore, any one of the damages that mentions the word tachas, we also apply this rule that they have to pay me meitav. The the government Shein Varegel, we learn Karen from Shein Varegel, the Chsivboy, Meitav Shadeyu. It says by Shein Varegel, Meitav Shadeyu. And we learn Karen from Shein Varegel. Avkan, Meitav, so to Meitav, Shimbol Shalom Karka, Lenizik, Vishvil Hazekoi. If you want to collect, if you want to pay Karka rather than cash, Magbiya Mina it is. It also uses the word Nesina in a lot of these places. The Gamar Nesina Mishor Shenagach Hazevet. Again, by Shor Shenagach Hazevet, which we already know from Shein Varegel, pays Meitav. It says there Yitain LaAdoinov. And therefore, any place where it says Nesina, it will also mean Meitav. It says O Yishalem. If the word Shalem is mentioned, we also know that it means Meitav. That's not from Shor, that's directly from Shein Varegel. The government Shein Varegel, the Sivbei, Meitav Kamma Yishalem. The Torah says the word Yishalem by Meitav Sadeu. So therefore, any other damage that has the word Yishalem will include Meitav. And the last word, that's a key word to tell you that it means Meitav, is Kesef. The government mi bar, and we learn that from bar. The Chsiv by bar, Kesef Yoshiv Lebolov. Bar, we know you pay Meitav, and by bar it says Kesef Yoshiv Lebolov, and therefore, any one of these in the list has either one of the four terms. The only one that does not have one of the four terms, Zokt Rashi, is Edim Zoymin. But Edim Zoymin, it says Nefesh bin Nefesh. And Rashi says that's just as good as Nefesh Tachas Nefesh. The Baltic. So that's the halacha, that's the main halacha that Rabbi Oish and Chiya want to impart, that all of these Nizikin pay me Meitav if they're not paying cash. Now the Gemara is going to repeat a svar that we've already discussed, but the Gemara is going to say it befairs. Our Mishnah repeats, these aren't alike. Frank the Gemara, why is it relevant to me that these aren't alike? My Kamar. The question of the Mishnah is, why did the Torah need to mention all of these four Nezikin? It could have just mentioned Shor, or it could have just mentioned Mave, and I would have known the other one. And we would learn the other one out of it. Therefore, the Gemara said, Lo yarei ashar karei Mave, and Lo yarei Mave karei Shor. But after we determined that Shor and Mave both need to be written, well, maybe those two should be enough, and it shouldn't have to write Hever. But maybe Chadam Itarti. So the Gemara said, no, if it only said Shor and Mave, I would say V'loi Zev Zeh Sheyesh Ben Ruachayim, Shor and Mave Ruachayim. So if the Torah just said that Shor and Mave are Chayiv, you wouldn't know that Eish is Chayiv. My Kamar, Amar Mishashim Ben Rabba, Hachi Kamar. The same thing we said a moment ago. Lichtov Rachmana Karti, V'teisei Idech Minayu. Let's just say Shor and Mave, and we know Eish from it. And then the Gemara said you can't because Shor and Mave is Ruach Chayiv. So the Gemara conceded that even if it said Shor and Mave, I wouldn't learn Eish. And then the Gemara said even if it said Shor, Eish, and Mave, I still wouldn't know Bar because Bar doesn't come to you. So Amar Rava v'chulu, all of these Nezikin, Kishadis Bar Beinayu, Ost Yakulu b'matzat. Technically, Zakrava, we don't need all four of these Nezikin mentioned. Because with any one of these Nezikin plus Bar, you'd be able to learn up anyone. And Rashi will give us an example of how this works. So Rashi says, let's say it said Bar and Karen, right? It said Bar and Karen. So I would know Shane, I would know Regel, I would know Eish and I would know Adam from those two. Why? Because this is the Kal V'chomer I can make. Ma bar, madich bar, she'ein darkei leilach v'lahazik. A bar is more lenient. It doesn't seek out trouble. It stays put. It's a Venus flytrap. It'll only damage you if you come to it. Nevertheless, the Torah says chayiv, she'ein, or Adam for that matter, or Regel for that matter, or Eish for that matter, that goes and seeks out someone to damage. She'darkei leilach v'lahazik. Loi kol shekein, surely it should be mechuyev as mazik. The problem is, I could ask, Malabor, Shechein Tchilas Asiyatzoi, Oimed Lenezik. Bar has a chumrah over everyone else that I wouldn't be able to learn from Bar, because Bar is a menace to society from the moment it's created. But an animal that eats is not a menace to society. All the other mazikin are not a menace to society. They're very valuable things. So therefore, bar would not be able to teach all the other mazikin. That's why you need a partner to bar. And let's say Karen Yechiach. Taimar b'shem, Zaklimora Karen Yechiach. Because Karen is also ein techilas asiyasei oimid l'nezek. So between bar and Karen, you'll know Shane, you'll know Regal, you'll know everything. I mala Karen Shane kavanos lahazik. Shekain kavanos lahazik. I Karen is kavanos lahazik. Maybe that's why Karen is chayiv, even though it's not chilas asiyasei oimid l'nezek. Bar Yechiach. So you have a tarashara from bar and any other one of the nezikin to include them all. There's only one exception: lavar mi Karen. Bar, if it's coupled up with Shane, Regal, Mava, or Eish, you wouldn't be able to learn Karen out of it. Because you'd still be able to make a pircha, from the Ikal Mifrach, Malakulu, whether it's Bar, whether it's Shane, whether it's Regal, whether it's Mava, whether it's Hever, Shekenu Adin Mitchilasa. All of the other damages, they're a mood right away. And we say they're Chayiv Nezek Shalom right away because they're truly things that are able to do damage. They're not a complete anomaly. Mashenkin Karen is a huge anomaly. And therefore, just because I knew that all the other Nezikin are Chayiv, I wouldn't be able to know that Karen is Chayiv as well. So the Torah had to mention Karen. Zok the Gemara, Ulamanda Omar Adar Ava Karen Adivish Kavanoti Lahazik. Yesterday we had a svara that Karen is more chomer than everything else. You know why? Because Karen is the only damage where the animal's angry and going with the intent to do damage. That's a reason to be mechayiv him. If that's the attitude you have towards Karen, then I feel Karen Nami. Then you'd be able to learn Karen from Bar and anyone else, because you wouldn't be able to say Mala Karen that's not Muad B'T Chilasan. But Karen is much worse. It's Kavanah. So if that's the case, if L'chala Pachas it only needs to mention Bar and Karen, why Taka did the Torah mention the Ferish in the Torah? Shane, Regel, Eish, Adam, why? And L'mai Hilchas is V'nu Rechmana. Gemara Lehilcha is saying, every one of the Nezikin that the Torah spells out, the Torah also shares with us a blurb that is an important halacha related to these Nezikin. And we'll go through them. Karen, you know where the Torah had to speak out Karen beferish? L'chalik ben tama l'muedes. There the Torah says there's a difference if it's a shor muad or shor tam. That's a very important halacha that we would never have known from the matzat. Shein v'regel l'potim rishus harabim. Shein and regel, if it's done in rishus harabim, it's potter. It's only mechuyev rishus hanizik. That's why it says ubir b'steyacher. Dafka if it's in the nizik's field. Bor, you know where the Torah had to speak about bor? Lifter boyas hakelim, to tell us that if kalim fall in the bor, you're not chayiv to pay for the kalim. You're only mechuyev to pay for the damages that happen to an animal, which we learn out of psukim by bor. Rabbi Yehuda, the mechayiv on this kalim b'bor. What about Rabbi Yehuda who says anyway you pay for kalim in the bor? So why do I need the Torah to tell me bor? It's lifter boyas ha'adam. If a person falls into a bor and gets hurt, everybody agrees the owner of the bar does not have to pay for the damages to that person. Adam, why did the Torah have to speak out about Adam Hamazik? To tell us that if a person does damage to another person, he not only pays nezek, but he also pays ripui, sheves, tzar, and boishes. Eish, why did the Torah speak out Eish? Lifter boy es hatom. There's a rule called Tamun Ba'Eish. What if I have a pile of hay and I have an expensive item embedded in that pile? If my fire burns the whole gadish down and destroys the expensive article that's needed, I'm potter to pay. And we learn it from Oya Kamma. Hakama is standing wheat that's visible to everybody. You're not chayiv if your Eish damages something that was concealed. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you are mechuyev. So why did the Torah mention Eish? What is it trying to teach us? Even if it's not really a real damage, it didn't. Normally, you assume the damage that you're liable for with Eish is if it consumes and destroys something. That's what's called the damage of Eish. But what if it singes a rock, so it makes them a little black? Or if you plowed your field and the fire hardened the karka a little bit, so you didn't really damage, how do you know you're mechuyev to pay for that? That's why the Torah says, as Rashi goes of Eish, l'chayve b'hani, the nafkal on hasa may oy hasada. It says oy hasada. From the oy we learn that you're not only chayiv if something got consumed and destroyed by the fire, you're also chayiv if there was damage done, even though it wasn't through the consumption. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we reserve to finish Daf Hey, and tomorrow we will Baruch Hashem learn Daf Vav.
Yosy, yesterday I was in the kitchen.
I'm sorry, I keep it 1 minute. That's right. If a person falls into a bar, the owner of the bar is not mukhliv to pay. Regardless, he's not mukhliv to pay. You're only mukhliv to pay if an animal or caleb fall into a bar. And we're going to learn that sugya. I guess a person always has to know where he's going. He's asking the Israeli soldier. They have to be careful for landmines and for IEDs. I'm sorry, Akiva, what were you saying?
No, so the first thing is regarding the bar, is the over lifnei iver? Although it has to be really based on the...
I'm sure he is, but it's very interesting that you bring that up. Lifnei iver lashita michshol. You know, if you look up the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, you know how it's defined?
Yeah, it talks about the advice.
That's right. So the question is normally about giving someone bad advice, right? But the problem is normally when there's like a black and white shot and then there's like a drasha, the first primary isser is lifnei iver lashita michshol. Don't put a block in front of a blind person. But it doesn't say that anywhere in the Pasuk. The way it defines lifnei iver is only giving a bad advice, which is very fair. Why isn't the base halacha mentioned? So the Meshech Chochmah has a phenomenal pshat. It's very simple pshat. It says, you know what we learn out of Hashem? It's a famous limud. A person could say, I didn't mean to give him bad advice. I thought it was good advice. It came out bad. So people could be conniving. They can give somebody advice that's very, very bad, and they can try to read the chayin that it's good. Like Biden's completely corrupt, right? And he says it's good that I'm removing the sanctions for China. It's good for America. So it's so easy to twist reality. Stating positively, the Rebbeinu knows what's going on inside your heart. From the fact that the Torah says that's what it's talking about. It's talking about something that you could conceal. Putting a stumbling block in front of a blind person, that's not concealed. That's an often grub damage you're causing somebody. And that's how the Rambam knew that it can't even be referring to what it's actually saying. It has to be only figurative, giving somebody bad advice. Because it has to be something that would be subject to HaKadosh Baruch Hu knowing what's going on inside your heart.
So just to that point, I don't know if you remember, but we did learn a sikha regarding giving somebody advice that even if it's good advice, the guy would make money on it. If I came to you, Yosy, and I said you should invest in canopy growth because they're going to make money and they would make money, what it doesn't take into consideration is, are you a money type of person? Are you a weed type of person? That's the v'yoresa. You will make money from it. Chas v'shalom that you're going to trip somebody out. But do you take the other person into consideration, his character? If he's not that kind of guy, if he's not a tolerant risk, why are you pushing him in that direction, even if it's going to come out good? If it's going to come out bad, you're stam shoyte. That's the chiddush of lifnei iver. But I wanted to ask you about the water from yesterday. We were in the coffee room, and somebody was holding hot water, and he was very next to me, and then all of a sudden he dropped it. I don't know if he got pushed or he dropped it on his own, and the water splattered on the floor and almost got me. It was only a cup's worth, and it wasn't really that hot. But had that been hot water, I was thinking right away that that's mayim, isn't it?
Well, the Maisa mayim is not one of the others.
I know, but
that would have been what the Havamin of the Gemara was. That is mayim.
So that would have been we couldn't even find what's the case of mayim. Is it squirt?
It was secondary water. You didn't shoot on somebody. That's koichai. You dropped water, and then the dropped water caused somebody to get dirty or something.
Got it. Oh, okay.
So, which is very similar to the case that you described.
Right.
The only thing missing in Tosfos is that he didn't mention that it happened in the coffee room.
Everything happens in the coffee room.
Oh, it's right. Here it is. Tosfos doesn't need to say that. It's pashut. Everything happens in the coffee room. That's right.
Well, if it
Okay.
was Taisus time, maybe it was the wine bar. Okay, Shkrayach Yossi.
Good. Thank you.